Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with a mix of Neighbors from Hell and revenge stories. In today's title story, OP's crazy neighbor burned down his fence. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, Neighbor Burned Down My Fence After Setting Trash on Fire, I Sued Her in Court. In all the years that I lived at this home, I saw many neighbors come and go. Some were pleasant and some I never really had contact with. Nothing prepared me for this neighbor that moved in next door to me. There is not really a nice way to say this, and I honestly don't care about being polite about them. They were total slobs. Now, I believe what you do in your house is your business, but when you bring your mess outside, it affects everyone around you. They would constantly be drinking and having friends over in their backyard, but were never being that noisy. The problem became their trash and what they would do with it. Beer cans and food wrappers would be thrown around and even started to make their way onto my property. Obviously, I was not happy about this and was going to do something about it. Now, some might ask me why I didn't just talk to the neighbor and tell them that their trash was getting on my property. Well, I did several times. Each time I was told that he would take care of it, and then nothing ever happened. So, I had a wooden fence built on the property line between the two houses instead. This actually seemed to stop the problem, and I no longer had to see the mess that was their backyard. My guess though is that their mess grew. The town eventually got sick of the eyesore and told them that they had to get rid of all the trash that accumulated over the last couple of years. Yes, you read that right, they had been dumping trash in their yard for 2 full years. Now, like most places, we do have trash pickup on certain days of the week. My guess is that the amount of the trash even in bags would have been too much and needed a special pickup. If you have too much trash, like you clean out a garage or something, you can pay them like $100 to come and pick it up. It's a pain, but it's usually cheaper than a private disposal company. I never found this out for sure, but if I had to guess, I would say that the next thing happened because they wanted to be cheap and get rid of it themselves. This would end up costing them so much more than the simple $100 would have been. They piled all of their trash into a big heap and decided to set it on fire to get rid of it. I wish I could say that the sight of the fire was the first thing that grabbed my attention, but it really was the smell. I don't know what stuff they burned, but I have never smelled anything worse in my life. That is when I went out and saw that my fence was on fire. I've got no idea why they decided to set it on fire so close to the property line, but I was definitely angry that the fence was being destroyed. I was also more worried about the fire spreading even further and immediately called 911 to get some help. Soon, fire trucks arrived and they were able to put out the smoldering garbage before it did any further damage. Neither house got any damage, but my fence was absolutely destroyed. I didn't want to eavesdrop on what the fire brigade was telling my neighbor, but I knew that I needed to speak to them next. I tried my best at first to hold in my anger, because I know that sometimes people make stupid choices. So the cost of getting the fence remains removed and then a new one installed is going to cost at least a few $100s. Neighbor, why are you telling me this? Well, because you started the fire that burned it down and damaged it. Neighbor, so what? It's your fence and you're responsible for it. I was angry that he didn't want to take any responsibility for the fence, and from my past encounters I knew that I was getting nowhere. So I decided to start a civil lawsuit to get the money back for the damaged fence. I knew it would take a while though, so I spent money out of my own savings to have the old one removed and the new one put in. For months, I swear, I could still smell that horrid odor from their lawn. When it finally came time to meet in court, I brought with me how much everything cost for the repairs, pictures of the damaged fence, the report from the fire department, and of course, pictures of the smoldering trash. The neighbor walked in looking so cocky, like he was going to win immediately. Once I explained what I was suing for, it was his turn to speak. Neighbor, Your Honor, there's no reason that I should pay for that fence. It is his fence on his property. If anything, he should be the one paying me for putting it up. It was emotionally damaging to see my neighbor put up a fence between the two of us when we were getting along so well. The fence had no purpose and a new one had ever less. I was ready to defend why I had built the fence in the first place, but the judge beat me to it. Judge, there is no reason that a fence couldn't be built on his property. From what I've been given, both the old and new fence are within regulation. Do you have the bill for the new fence? Me, yes, your honor. It was $478 to get rid of the remains and build the new fence. Neighbor, it is his fence though. If I'm going to pay for a fence, then it should be mine. Judge, you're paying for it because your own reckless actions caused the first one to be burned down. The report says you started a garbage fire in your own backyard, and that is what started the fire. I am granting in favor of the plaintiff of the amount of $478. The neighbor was in complete shock that he actually lost, despite it being very clear that I would have won from the start. My revenge didn't stop there though, and I ended up calling the town anonymously about a strange smell. When they arrived and saw that the mess of half-burned garbage was still there, they were not happy. Apparently, they had been told it still needed to be cleaned, and since it was in their backyard, they were getting away without doing it. That one call though caused the town to have someone come and remove it at the cost of the neighbor, and the smell finally subsided. There was one last cherry on top that I didn't even know until I was told by someone else. When the neighbor suddenly disappeared, I didn't know why for months until I found out that setting your trash on fire is actually illegal, and between the money he owed me, the town, legal fees and fines, he fell back on his mortgage and had to move out. The new people that moved in are super nice, and I talk to them over the fence all the time. They ended up redoing the entire backyard and it looks amazing. You would never believe that the people who lived there before them had it as such a mess. And Ripe Stars, I am really curious, wherever you live, is it legal to burn trash in your backyard or in general on your property? I think even here in Thailand it is definitely not legal, but obviously, as many other things here, it's simply not really enforced. Back when I lived in the north of Thailand, I had neighbors, or I would say it's not really neighbors, but they lived like 1 or 2 kilometers away, who frequently burned trash, and whenever I had to drive to work, I would basically drive through smoke clouds. Definitely a pleasant feel in the morning. Either way, if you enjoy the stories about crazy neighbors, then please don't forget to like the video, because it would be absolutely amazing if we could reach 1000 likes. Thank you so much, I am so grateful for your help, and now let's continue with the stories. The next one is titled Mess About With My Flight That Will Cost You Millions of Dollars. A long time ago, I took a trip to Turkey on their national carrier with my girlfriend. When attempting to return home, I was told that they had overbooked the flight and there was only one seat left. Rather than abandon each other, we were told we could catch a flight the next day instead, so we agreed to that. We were both a bit annoyed as we were due to work the next day and our employer was not pleased that we wouldn't be returning as agreed, but these things happened, so we made the most of it. We had to find accommodation as where we had been staying had been booked, and pay as much for a single night as we would spend on the entire rest of the 3-day trip though. The next day we turned up at the airport only to be told that my ticket had expired and I was supposed to fly yesterday. I explained the situation but was told that it was my problem, not theirs. In the end, I had to buy another ticket, which cost me more than the entire rest of the trip, including the extra day's overnight stay. I was livid and the uncaring attitude of the staff really rubbed me the wrong way. So, when I arrived back at work, I decided to make some changes. Both my girlfriend and I were working in an international events organizations, and we decided to avoid using this company in our respective organizations. I also cancelled existing flights booked using them and switched to other providers. This alone cost them tens of thousands of dollars. I did a rough calculation when I left that role a couple of years later and worked out that my boycott alone had cost them almost $300,000, and as part of my handover notes, my experience with them was thoroughly chronicled along with instructions to avoid using them at all costs. Many years later I had forgotten all about this until I am catching up with old colleagues. I was introduced to the person doing my old job and she updated me on some of the places events had recently been held, and when she was telling me she said, "Except for Turkey, of course." Apparently, even after I had left and several replacements had been in post, this instruction was still part of the handover notes. I told her that I was the guy who had put that in the notes and why, and she said that it was the perfect petty revenge. I posted this here and in Pro Revenge, but have had it suggested in that thread that it belongs here instead. This whole business has cost them millions of dollars by now, and I have no idea if my long since ex still did the same for her place of work, which might mean millions more. Either way, it is something they'd never know unless they read this. And the next one is titled "Dock Our Pay and Threaten to Fire Us? Enjoy the Shutdown." This happened almost 4 years ago in my last job before going solo. I was already planning on leaving, but this incident quickening my exit and the severance package did not hurt either. Back in 2014, I got a job as a customer support agent for a telecommunications company. I have worked in a call center before and I went for this job for 2 reasons. Number 1, it was customer support, not sales, important for later, and number 2, it had a flexible working schedule which I needed at the time, 4-hour to 8-hour shifts in a day. In the beginning, everything was fine. The pay was a bit more than the average, OT and holidays were paid, and the working environment was good. Then, a year in, everything changed. The telecommunications company decided, for cost-cutting reasons, to outsource both customer support and sales and sold our contracts to a call center company. That brought a tsunami of changes. First, we were moved to another building in the city, much bigger, which hosted only call centers. Second, the 2 departments were merged in one. That meant a lot of people lost their jobs, between 140 to 160, and the merger also meant that the people that were left had 2 jobs to do: customer support and sales. They went for a 3-to-2 rotation. 1 week you did 3 days of CS and 2 days of sales, the next 3 days sales, 2 days CS. The only shift exempted was the night shift, thank God for nights. The third was the pay cuts. That wasn't evident at first, but it was there. They cut our hours from 8 to 6, but because we worked 8 hours, we had 2 hours OT. The commissions from sales also helped at the beginning, and finally, it brought a change of culture in the workplace. Before the merger, we were relaxed and didn't have goals or cutoff times. CS can take a lot of time, especially for changing providers, and now we had monthly sales goals and a minimum and maximum call time. Minimum of 3 minutes, maximum of 10. For a year, things were kind of okay. Then the real problems started. First was the delaying of OT and bonuses payments, and then almost all of our managers quit and the new ones, brought over from other call centers, that were more tin tyrants than managers. Raising the targets for daily calls and sales to unrealistic targets did not help either. We started to become a meat grinder, people were leaving and new employees didn't last long. 4 months on average, new policies were implemented that made no sense, like if you are 10 minutes or more late, you had an hour of your pay docked. During that time, me and some other experienced employees were writing everything down just in case. A couple of major incidents happened, one I described in a previous post, but the worst was about to happen. It is important to note that I live in a country that has earthquakes, usually 2 major in a year. There are certain procedures that you have to follow during an earthquake. You kind of see where this is going. The incident: it was around 14 on a Friday of August when an earthquake happened. It was a good long one, most of us were on the phones at that hour, most of us took immediate precautions. After it passed, most of us tried to follow the evaluation procedures, but the managers stopped us. And by the way guys, I'm not sure if OP here is talking about evaluation or evacuation procedures. Anyway, they said that the phones were still working and we had to do our jobs. Most people got scared and went back to work, but me and a few others, about 10 in total, walked out. 10 minutes later, we all got a call from HR that because we walked out, our pay for the day was docked and if we didn't return, we would be fired. 15 minutes after that, the first aftershock hit, bringing down the power, forcing them to evacuate the building. Their response time was atrocious, 2 hours and 3 aftershocks. The revenge? The same afternoon we had contacted our union and filed complaints, we spilled the beans about everything, especially the last day. On Monday, the union opens an investigation on the incident. HR and the managers tried to stonewall them, but their atrocious evacuation time during a major earthquake had caught the eye of the government agency responsible for work safety. Thanks to some helpful cops directing traffic seen, it was the last building evacuated. Along with the union being watchful already from a previous incident, the investigation was thorough. The aftermath, the investigation brought to light all the bad practices of the company. The biggest fine was by the government due to the evacuation failure. Adding to that was a 2-month shutdown to check the building for structural damage, which found 6 emergency exits locked. All the employees for all the call centers got 3 months of extra pay as compensation for being denied evacuation. Then came the labor law violations. Everybody was paid in full for the day, plus overtime, heavily inflated because it was late. The 10 of us that walked out got a severance pay in the low 5-digit scale. The call center company, having to pay the fines while having about 40% of their call centers shut down for 2 months, lost some very lucrative contracts. It managed to barely survive until it was bought out by another call center company in 2019. And I gotta say, Ripe Stars, I am really wondering where this story took place. When I heard about unions, I for some reason instantly thought of India or maybe Bangladesh or something. But in the end, when OP is talking about 5-digit scale, I would assume he either means euros or dollars. That would lead me to believe that it is more like a European country. Either way, if you have any idea or clues about where this story could have taken place, please let me know in the comments. And the next one is titled Typical Neighbor from Hell's Story. Background: I rent a house. My landlord is a slumlord who happens to own several houses on my street, including the one next to me. I've lived here for years now. The new neighbors moved in right before the new year. We have a shared driveway that is shaped like a Y. We both enter on the same part, and then I go right to get to my driveway. They go left to park in theirs. For the last 2 months, they block me in or out of my driveway no less than 2 times a week by not pulling all the way up into their branch of the driveway. All 4 of the roommates living there have blocked me at least twice. I'm not going to go into details, but it is a huge annoyance to me, and I've let them and the landlord know how stupid I think they are, and I have no issues about waking them all up at 3 AM to move one of their cars, and yet they still do it. The revenge: our neighborhood has a lot of crime. It is also very dark, no streetlights to be found. These guys called the landlord and convinced him they needed floodlights. I already have a floodlight which faces the driveway and in doing so shines right on the side of their house. However, one bulb went out and the other was not wired correctly, and so now it doesn't work at all. They demanded the landlord fix my light as well as install one for them, and apparently he is as tired of them as I am, so he consented without my approval or even notifying me, and some guy came over to my house while I was at work and replaced the entire floodlight with one of those automatic lights. Timer light won't turn on during the day but comes on by itself at night. As it turns out, their house did not have the wiring to install a new one, but since mine shines on the whole upper part of the driveway, he figured only mine was needed. So they didn't get a light. I didn't even notice it until one of those guys came over and talked to me the next day. Girl explained the above situation. So it would be great if you could just keep it on so our houses are a little safer. It's so nice that the landlord got you an automatic one, so you don't even have to worry about remembering to turn it on. Me, I don't think so. Money has been pretty tight, and I just don't think I can afford a higher electric bill. Girl, it is only a light. It cannot be more than like 2 cents a day. Me, still, I just got used to not having a light there, and I think it would shine in my window and keep me up at night. I'm fine like it is. Girl gets increasingly frustrated. It's only a few more cents, and it will really make us feel safer at night. And here is where I just stop even remotely trying to be polite. Me, Yeah, well, I don't really care about how you all feel at night. If you guys cannot take the extra 2 seconds to pull farther forward and not park like complete a-holes, then don't expect me to pay the extra 2 cents for a light so you can sleep better at night. Get the F off my porch, and next time you block my driveway, I'm having your car towed. The other day I was unlocking my front door right as one of them pulled up. The switch for the floodlight is right inside the doorway, so I flipped it on and it got their attention, and then I turned it back off, smiled and waved and went inside my house. F you, I win. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.